Hello everyone, welcome to SHOCKMANIA. I am the Artie Dans. In this video, this is a special Blu-ray review of a Chinese ghost story trilogy. This was sent to me by Imprint Asia and ViaVIsion to do, well, a review of it. Now, there is no obligation for me to give it a positive review, so just bear in mind as you're watching this that the opinions in this video are all of my own and I'm not influenced by anything just because I received this package in the mail. Now, this is a Blu-ray review. I won't be reviewing the movies themselves, but rather I'll be reviewing the package that these Blu-ray movies came in. And it's quite a nice package. Now, when it comes to the technical details of Blu-ray movies, I have to admit I am not as nerdy as I wish I was. Now, this review, will be very layman in terms of this product. So, don't be looking at me for highly technical details. You know, I don't have a fancy HDR screen and it wouldn't have benefited this film anyway. I don't have a fancy 5.1 or a 7.1 setup, which again, wouldn't have benefited from this film either. I watched this on a PlayStation 5, on a Samsung Series 6 television, which is a good 11 years old now. And as you would all know, or most of you would know, a PlayStation 5 is a horrible way to watch any kind of movie on, but it was the best Blu-ray player I had available to watch this disc. Now, the imprint release of a Chinese ghost story trilogy, let me start that again. The Imprint Asia release of a Chinese ghost story trilogy comes packed in a very hefty cardboard box. There is some good weight behind this thing, and the printing is very glossy. If I actually put the appropriate front page for you, you can see it. Now, speaking of the front page, you can see that it is an image of the cast from the first movie, and if we flip it around, we get the cast of the second and third movie, with the cast of the second movie in the upside down section that is part of this little roof on it. Now, thankfully, the annoying it's not R-rated. The annoying Australian M-rated sticker, which usually ruins every package that it's on. You just have to look at some of these discs behind me to see it. It is not featured on the front cover. It was actually featured on the shrink wrap that I removed during the unboxing. However, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I kind of kept the M-rated sticker and I stuck it right at the bottom of the box, just to remind me that this movie contains moderate violence and moderate coarse language. I don't actually remember any of the moderate coarse language, but I have done the Australian classification training, so I might check the documentation to see what they would consider moderate coarse language. Now, here's the thing. I'm new to steel case collecting. It's not something that I do. And if looking behind me, you can see that there is not a single steel case on that shelf. And in fact, most of those discs from about there down are actually bootlegs. It's the ones up that you can't see are all the original ones. But this is the steel case collection, and I'll put a better photo up on the screen. It contains a really nice graphics on the front cover, which is an amalgamation of a couple of different scenes and characters from the first movie. But what I really like is the back, where it has this beautiful full case printing of the absolutely gorgeous Joey Wong. I'm not afraid to admit that she's a beautiful woman, and she's beautiful in this film. Also, with this collection comes this little book. It's the Chinese Ghost Story Trilogy book. Now, inside this book, it contains backstories about who Ni Xiaoqian is and a little bit of information about the strange tales from a Chinese studio production house. And they've written, a production house is not the correct word. They've written it says in the book, over 500 different tales. And all three of these movies are based on some of those tales, with clearly the main feature of this movie, of this box set, the Chinese Ghost Story, being based on The Enchanted Shadow. Now, throughout the booklet, there's some synopsises about the film. There is also a little bit of a insight into Hong Kong cinema during the time, and there's also what I could probably only describe as kind of an academic article about the themes of the movie, specifically the themes of the second movie and the political stuff. And it's interesting to note that the political themes around ghosts are part of the reason, or are the reason why proper ghost movies are banned in mainland China. You might think, no, I've seen plenty of Chinese mainland ghost movies. You have, but in the end, you find out that they're all dreams or something else. They're never ghosts. Anyway, that's besides the point. Now, peppered throughout this book are lots of really lovely photos. However, you will notice that the photos don't have any clarity or sharpness. They are colorful, so clearly they have been touched up in post-production to pop out some of that color, but it appears that a lot of these photos were either taken from the film negatives or some other kind of negative where they just haven't been developed as sharp as they should have been. Now let's quickly touch on the movies. And as I said, this video is not intended to be a review of the 3 movies. Rather, I will just give you a quick synopsis of what the 3 movies are about, and I'll give you my indicative ghost rating as well. So in the first movie, we follow a bumbling debt collector called Ling, who is utterly terrible at his job. Now he's hungry and with nowhere to sleep, so he ends up at the haunted orchid temple where a ghost hunter called Ying is also residing. He is hunting a mysterious group of ghosts who are seducing men. One of those ghosts is Ni Xiao Chen, or Nipsu's son, as she's known in the Cantonese version. But to make this easy for the rest of this review, I'm going to refer to her by her Mandarin name of Ni Xiao Chen, or just Xiao Chen. Ni Xiao Chen attempts to seduce Ling, but they fall in love with each other. Xiao Chen's master, a tree devil known as Madam, becomes enraged when Xiao Chen fails to allow her to consume his soul and banishes her to the underworld, where she is to marry the Black Mountain Demon. With the help of Yin, Ling travels to the underworld to rescue Xiao Chen and save her soul, allowing her to be reincarnated in the future. If I was to give this movie a rating using my ghost rating, it would be 4 ghosts. It was pretty spectacular. And there's a reason why it's a classic. In part 2, we continue to follow Ling as he aimlessly wanders the land, attempting to do his job while also hoping to encounter Xiao Chen. After being mistaken for a criminal, he is imprisoned with a man called Elder Chu, who helps him escape on the eve of his execution. Ling steals a horse belonging to another Taoist priest, who eventually catches up with him at a villa. However, while there, a group of soldiers appear, and one of them looks exactly like Xiao Chen. Due to an artifact that he is carrying, he is mistaken for Elder Chu, and he tags along with them as they attempt to break out the rebels' leader, who just so happens to be the father of the woman who looks like Xiao Chen. However, the king's high priest, who has been possessed by an evil spirit, gets in the way of the rescue, and it's up to Ling, the Taoist priest, and the rebels to save the day. Using the ghost rating for this one, I liked that Leslie Cheung and Joey Wong were in this one, but the story wasn't as good. I will give this 3 ghosts. A Chinese Ghost Story 3 is the weakest of the 3 movies and sees Leslie Cheung's character of Ling now replaced by Little Tony Leung's bumbling character of Fong. He's called Little Tony because there's also another Tony Leung in Cantonese cinema who's referred to as Big Tony. Fong is a kind of monk in training who is helping to transport a golden Buddha to a new temple. On the way to this temple, Fong and his master spend the night in the old Orchid Temple, the location of the first movie. It's now 100 years after the events of part 1, and the tree devil has been reincarnated and is back to her old ways of using young beautiful ghosts to seduce lonely men. Lotus, who looks exactly like Ni Xiao Chen because she's played by Joey Wong, attempts to seduce Fong, but is unable to break his monk willpower, while in the meantime his master is kidnapped and a bounty hunter is employed to help Fong and Lotus rescue him from the tree devil. Using the patent pending ghost rating for part 3, didn't really like this as much as the first 2 movies. It dragged on for far too long, so I would only give it 2 ghosts. Now, all 3 of these movies were remastered by the Shout Factory back in 2025 for an initial digital and Blu-ray release. God, that's tough to say. With this box set being an Australian license by ViaVision and thus their mini label Imprint Asia. Now, if you didn't load the discs of the movie into your player and just admired the packaging, and God knows why you would do that since you've paid so much money for it, you'd be probably very satisfied with your purchase. But as a movie lover, You want to watch the films to make sure what's on the discs is worth your money. And for that, I would say you're probably sitting at about an 8 out of 10. Now, I am not a person who enjoys watching special features on the discs, but if you are, you'll be pleased to know that each movie contains their own Hong Kong confidential documentary about the film. I didn't watch it, so I couldn't tell you what it was about. Also loaded on most of the discs are some archival interviews, still galleries, and of course, a trailer of each film. And on its own, I would say that's a rather impressive collection of bonus features. What I'm interested in though is the movie and how good they look and sound after their remastering. Now first, I'm happy to report that for the most part, the image quality of the film is crisp and clear for the most part. And for the most part, represents scenes of just plain dialogue. Anytime there is action or special effects in the movie, you'll notice that the shot, the vision that you're seeing is both soft and a little bit blurry. It's clear that when these action scenes take place, the remastering kind of falters. Now, I will come to the defense of the remastering process here. I don't think they're to blame for those soft scenes. My gut feeling is that the blame lies with the original negative of the film and how the movie was produced almost 40 years ago. Clearly, when they were adding the optical effects to the negatives of the film, some picture quality had to be sacrificed, and thus this remastering preserves, to a funny degree, preserves that sacrifice that was made. It is jarring though, as you go from a crisp scene to or crisp shot, I should say, to a slightly out of focus or fuzzy shot, and then back to a crisp shot. But just realize that every time that happens, that is a special effect going on. The audio is also a bit of a strange one, because what I mean by that is on these discs, there are 2.0, 5.1 and 7.1 surround sound tracks on it. And as I mentioned, I don't have the equipment to test how great those soundtracks are, but it does seem a little overkill when you consider that the original movies were recorded only in mono. They're crisp and clear with no distortion, which is great. And the music just sounds spectacular. The theme song and that ethereal sound when Xiao Chen is on the scene just sound terrific. Now, however, there's always a however. And this is not an issue with the remastering process, so just keep that in mind. It's the dubbing that will most likely annoy a lot of people. Now, Hong Kong cinema was a wild time in the 80s and 90s, and allow me to wax a little bit lyrical here, if you may. There wasn't enough time while making these movies to shoot second, third, fourth takes. These movies were shot on shoestring budgets that needed to be done really, really quickly. So thus, recording dialogue on set would have been pointless, would have been wasting everyone's time if the actors keep flubbing the lines. These movies don't have what's called sync audio. That is where you record the audio at the same time as you're recording the vision. So what these characters are doing is just mumbling or saying or lip syncing lines of dialogue that would be approximately the same length as what is in the script. And then those lines are redubbed in post-production either by the original actors or by actors with better voices. And Jackie Chan famously says that in his first 10 or so years of movie making that his voice was dubbed by someone else. And it was only as he became a star that he was able to do his own dubbing in movies. Now, if you've seen Bruce Lee movies, old kung fu movies and English dubs of old kung fu movies, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. The same thing also happens with the Cantonese and Mandarin tracks of almost every movie from that time. So it is not a problem exclusive to a Chinese ghost story. It's more of a problem exclusive to Hong Kong cinema. And fun fact, there is still a Chinese studio right now who makes very low budget horror movies who uses this exact same technique, and it's very annoying to watch. So this means that the actors' lips are not necessarily saying what was in the script. What it also means is that you're also getting additional lines of dialogue, but you don't know who's saying it on the screen because none of the actors are moving their lips. So you kind of have to ensure that you've remembered the voice of who that character is in order to follow certain lines of dialogue that are going along. Now, just remember, there's no amount of remastering that can ever fix something like that. This would need to be a complete CGI remaster, or heaven forbid, I don't want to even use the words, but AI might be able to do it. But let's hope it never gets to that point where AI is used to reproduce films just so that the dubbing is correct. That's just horrible. But all up, the remastering process is impressive, leading to a rather colourful series of feature presentations without any telecine judder. Now, this is important. If you've ever seen the original films or original copies of these movies, or in fact, maybe any VHS copy of a Hong Kong movie from the 70s, 80s, or 90s, you'll notice that the picture just constantly bobbles and jumps around. This is due to a poor telecine process, either at the camera end that is spooling the original negative, or at the end that's actually capturing the picture that comes off the negative. That's not in this. This is a proper remaster, and you're getting a beautiful, crisp, for the most part, clear, shake-free image. And that's very important when it comes to something like this. What I am confused about, when the package is so impressive and what's on the disc is so good, what I'm confused about is why the first thing you see at the menu is a misaligned menu. And there is a massive black border at the bottom of all three discs menus. So either it should have been stretched to full screen, or it should have been centered so that at least there was appropriate borders at the top and bottom. But just looking at that, now you might not even notice it when you play the disc, but it is quite jarring that such a small thing was overlooked in such an impressive package. Additionally, I'm not a fan of this so-called redubbing or remastering of the English subtitles. I think there are times where the subtitles really falter and are not as clear as they should be. I also think that there should have been some consistency with the names. So Xiao Chen's Cantonese name, Xu San, seems to be using more of a Taiwanese spelling than a Cantonese spelling. So just little things like that don't seem to be well thought out. And also the use of the word abracadabra, but I get that in a localization process. So would I recommend this package? Absolutely. I would recommend it. The movies alone make it worth it. So if you're a special features nut, then you're probably going to really love that part of it too. For me, I had never seen any of these three movies, which is really odd as someone who absolutely adores Hong Kong cinema and adores Chinese cinema, and I do like the tale of Ni Xiao Chen. I actually hadn't seen these until this week when I sat down and watched all three of them. So I was very impressed by it. Spectacular performances from Leslie Chung and Joey Wong really immersed me in the first film. But by the third film, I was starting to think Choi Hark was probably just flogging a dead horse with the series. If you're interested in buying your own copy, I will leave a link to ViaVision's web store where you can purchase it. I believe this disc is region free, so you shouldn't have any problems if you're out of Australia to buy this and play it. I also don't get any commission or sales or anything from you buying from that link. It is just a pure link to their web store, so you can buy it without any obligation that you feel like maybe you're helping me out, or you like, I don't want to buy it because I'm helping him out. There is nothing like that here. You're just buying it for your own pleasure. And speaking of pleasure, it's been a pleasure to present this to you, and hopefully you get a bit of an insight as to what is on this disc. I'm getting a bit sick of talking, and you can tell that I'm starting to mumble a little bit. So I'm going to leave the Blu-ray review here, but I would be interested to know if you've purchased either this Imprint Asia version or the original Shout Factory version, what you thought of the movie. I'm getting a notification. Sorry about that. Should have muted everything before I started recording, but I'm keen to know what you thought of it. Additionally, your opinion of the films. As I said, part 1 is a 4 ghost, part 2 is a 3 ghost, and part 3 is a 2 ghost, but your opinion may vary. I am the Artie Dents. You are watching Shockmania. Thank you so much again to Imprint Asia. I have a Discord. You can see a link on the screen right now. Join the Discord, have a chat with us all. Otherwise, like, subscribe, all that other jazz. I will catch you next time.